And we're on. Hello. I'm Nye from Folk Friend and Finale Guitar and so on. I'm sure you all know that if you're watching this, but thank you for tuning in. The topic of today's Folky Fridays is going to be ways to avoid bar chords, or Barre chords as they're sometimes known. Barre chords, as I like to call them. Yeah, Barre chords are tricky. Barre chords? Bar chords are tricky. A lot of beginners struggle with them. The whole thing of trying to get your finger to go flat and push down with the bony part of your finger is not very comfortable when you're just starting out, and it can be quite difficult to get all the notes to come out clear. So what I'm going to show you today, although they are really useful and you should definitely learn how to do them if you are fairly new to the guitar, I'm going to show you some ways that you can avoid those, because often particularly with playing along with Irish and Scottish music, you'll find that the tune is going too fast for you to get your hands around those big chunky shapes at speed, and there's usually some much easier chord shapes that you can play to avoid them. So yeah, I'm going to be showing you loads of different ways to avoid bar chords in different contexts, and hopefully as well, if there's any chords that you find difficult, you can just put them in the chat and then I'll show you some variations of them that are easier to play. So if there are any chords that you struggle with, they don't have to be bar chords, even if it's things like C is a big stretch, for example. There's an easy version of that I can show you, or anything like that. Just stick a thing in the box, let me know what chords you find difficult, and I will try and show you some easy ones. On the bar chords then, also if you are here, all four of you at the moment, leave us a comment, let me know who you are, that you're out there in the ether. It's always nice to know who's actually watching. Yeah, so bar chords, let's have a look at some of the common ones. I suppose the first bar chord you'll probably come across in the folk world is B minor, because B minor is very common in the keys of G and D, and they're the two kind of starting point keys, if you like. So B minor normally would be like an A minor chord played with the wrong fingers and then moved up 2 frets, and then you put a bar behind it and that kind of acts like a capo, and that gives you your B minor chord like that, and that's the one that you'll find in all the chord books and if you Google B minor chord and so on. You could also play it as a bar chord all the way up here. We got Simon, cheers for tuning in. We've got Yvonne. We've got Brian. The new website. I'm glad you asked. Yeah, the new website is that's why I'm a tiny bit late starting today, as I've been working on it basically all week. It's very nearly done. There's just a few minor little technical glitches to sort out, and we're going to be going through those over the weekend. Me and my friend Steve, who's helping me build it. So yeah, hopefully the new Folk Friend website will be out probably Monday, I'm hoping, but I'm not going to put an official date on it because I know what I'm like with deadlines. So it'll definitely be out by next weekend, and next weekend's YouTube video will be, you know, oh, look at the new Folk Friend website, it's really good, go and check it out kind of thing. So yeah, it'll be out next weekend, if not before. And I will be, don't worry, I'll be spamming you all with loads of emails when it is ready to tell you to go and look at it as well. So yeah, it'll be out soon. Anyway, yeah, going back to B minor. So B minor's like that. There's loads of alternatives. If you're playing it in the context of a tune in G major, the easiest way to avoid a B minor is to just take a G chord, and I'm playing country G like this with the ring finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. And personally, I always play that for a G chord because I think it's much nicer than the normal one like that. So if you do use country G, you can avoid B minor by playing this instead. You just take the middle finger off the G chord. Now you're going to leave off the bottom string, and potentially take the little finger off as well. It doesn't really matter too much about that one. You can leave it on or you can take it off. And that will be a sort of fairly good functional alternative to B minor if you're in the key of G. If you want it to sound a bit nicer, a bit more B minor-y, then add your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. and that gives you a really nice B minor 11 chord. Functionally, a B minor 11 chord is just a B minor, so it'll work anytime it says B minor. If you play that instead, it'll be fine. Or anytime you're thinking, oh, a B minor would work here, B minor 11 is always going to be fine. Tomorrow's clip, by the way, tomorrow at 12:30, I'll be running you through why B minor 11 is the same functionally as B minor, you know, using more jazzy chords, and how you can just invent them on the fly and come up with loads of cool jazzy chord options. So that'll be out tomorrow at 12:30. Hopefully that'll be helpful for that kind of thing. So yeah, that B minor 7 shape, that is a really useful one, and let's talk about the other time you'd come across B minor a lot, which is if you were in the key of D major, where B minor's D's related minor. So that means that any time there's a D major chord, if you were playing like a standard D, G and A chord progression, which is your main chords in the key of D, you can always swap the one chord to its related minor. So you could swap D to B minor, which is related to it. So that would give you something like that. If you use that B minor 7 shape I just showed you, instead of that, it'll B minor 11 rather, it'll sound just as good. So that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a really, really handy shape and much, much, much easier to play. Let's have a look at another B minor that I really like in some contexts. It's all the way up here on the 7th fret, and what you do is you get there's two ways of doing it actually. The easier one is probably get your index finger and put that on the B note on the 7th fret of the bottom E string. Then let that kind of gently rest on the A string so that it mutes it, and then put your next two fingers on the 7th fret of the next two strings. So you've got your middle finger on the D string and your ring finger on the G string, and that gives you this really nice open ringing B minor 11 chord. And I love that one, I use it all the time for loads of stuff. And there's a lot of other chord shapes that you can conveniently slide to from that as well, and you can find examples of those shapes in the video on the Folk Friend channel, which is called something along the lines of quick change chord shapes for tunes in the key of A major, or something like that. So if you want to find useful shapes like that which just slide really nicely, they're all in that video. Yeah, so that's another nice B minor substitute for you. That's about it for B minor really. Those are my kind of three go-to ones. Latecomers, terrible. Yeah, awful. But we're glad you're here now anyway. Thanks for coming along. I'll run you through just what we covered so far. We've literally only just started anyway, so you're not doing too badly. I was just saying B minor you can replace with several easier things. If you're playing it in the key of G, then you can take the country G chord like that with the two fingers at the top. Just take the middle finger off, leave the bottom E string out, don't strum it, and take the top one off as well, and that will work as a substitute for B minor if you're in the key of G. If you're in any other key where you need a B minor, add that middle finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. You've got B minor 11, really nice B minor substitute, works in place of B minor in any context. And then as well as that, if you put your index finger on the 7th fret of the bottom string, let that gently mute the A string, and add your next two fingers on the 7th of the next two strings, you've got another version of B minor 11, which kind of sounds nicer than the other one. That's quite handy as well. So yeah, that's all we've done so far, Francis. You've not missed loads. Other bar chords. Let's have a look at F, because people often ask me about F. It doesn't come up so much in tune backing, but it it does in the key of D minor sometimes. Comes up in G Mixolydian, I suppose, but it's very often in songs. An F is one that people really struggle with because it's a huge beefy bar chord. You've got to bar all the strings and make the shape like an E major chord. So it's really difficult F. One F you can do, which will always sound like F, is like this. So basically, if you make a C major chord, as you normally would, and then get your ring finger and your middle finger and move both of those up one string. So the ring finger is on the D string and the middle finger's on the G string. Now ideally, for it to really sound like an F chord, you should flatten the index finger so that the index finger is squished and it's doing those top two strings. And I find the way that you can do that easily is to twist your hand slightly like that, so that your index finger twists anti-clockwise, and that way the kind of bony part on the side of your index finger is pushing down on those top two strings, rather than the tubby bit at the bottom, which will find that rather difficult. But yeah, that way you can, if you just play the top four strings, then you get quite a nice F chord. And that'll work okay as an F if you're in a hurry. Another nice option in most contexts is actually to leave the index finger just fretting the B string and let the top string ring out with no fingers on it in that chord, and that gives you F major 7. It's kind of like just a softer F. So most of the time where you need an F chord, try this. It'll probably sound okay. In some contexts it won't. Like, for example, if you're in the key of G Mixolydian and you play that, it'll sound dreadful. But if you're in the key of F, it'll be perfectly fine. I won't go into why, but just try that first and see if it works. If it doesn't work, then flatten your index finger and play that one. Another F which I really like, because I find that those ones, they're a bit too high pitched, they've not got any bass to them, and if you're playing folky stuff you really want the bass notes, because that's kind of your place in the session mix, I suppose, to rumble along under everything else. So if you want an F with a bass note in it, you can take that chord shape and you can loop your thumb all the way around the back, so that the thumb is pushing down on the bottom string, first fret, and then the end of the thumb is kind of just gently resting on the A string so that it's muted. And that way you get a much beefier sounding F chord. And if you find it difficult to flatten that index finger, then again just put it on the B string and it'll sound okay. Now while we're looking at this chord shape, if you can get your thumb round, if you've got like big hands and flexible thumbs and you find this doable, you can get all sorts of cool chords out of this. You can slide that up, put your thumb on the 3rd fret, so just slide the whole shape up 2 frets. That gives you a G chord. And if you slide it up 2 more, you've got a really, really nice A chord, because you've got the A string there, so you can leave the A string in that one. And you can get all sorts of really nice chord things for the key of A major by using this thumb shape. So that's dead handy. Are there any other useful Fs? That one's nice. This one is useful if you're in the key of D minor, either, well, if you're in D Aeolian basically, or a song in D minor. It's useful if you're playing in the key of F for some reason, maybe you would if you're a singer. It's not necessarily useful, it's not useful in G Mixolydian or other modes that might have an F in. But if you're playing in the key of F or D minor, then put your index finger on the bottom string 1st fret. Add your ring finger on the on that one, on the G string 2nd fret, and add your middle finger on the first fret of the B string, and then let the index finger mute the A string, and then strum all the strings. And that gives you a really nice F major 7 with a D in it. F, G, A, B, C, D. F major 13. So that will work in place of F major if you're in the key of F or the key of D minor, and that sounds pretty nice and jazzy. And that's probably the easiest to play of all of them. So yeah, there's loads of Fs there. Has anyone else got any suggestions for chords that they find difficult, or keys that they struggle to play in, or anything like that? If you've got any ideas, just bang them in the box and we'll have a look at them a little bit later on. What other common bar chords crop up? F sharp minor is a very, very common one, because if you're playing in the key of D major, it's your chord 3. And I can show you that on the amazing mode wheel while we're here. So if we're in the key of D major, that's our complete list of chords there. We've got D major chord 1, E minor chord 2, and then the third chord would be F sharp minor. Now with that, it's there, look, F sharp minor. With that F sharp minor chord, the times you would use it would be, you can use it, number one, as a substitute for D, because for any chord you can always play the chord which is 2 notes below it in the same key. Yvonne, you've read my mind, look at that. Or you can play the one which is 2 notes above it in the same key. So in the case of D major, if we're in D major, or D Ionian, another name for the same thing, we can substitute our D major either to B minor, its related minor, aka the chord which is 2 below it in the scale, 1, 2, or we could substitute our D 2 up, so F sharp minor. So either of those we could play instead of D. And what you'll find very commonly is that people will do things like, if they're going from D up to G, chord 1 to chord 4, that kind of thing, they'll play D first, and then they'll play one of its substitutes before going to chord 4. And D up to F sharp minor up to G is a really nice one, because it kind of sounds like stairs. It goes ba ba ba. So that kind of thing. So just using F sharp minor as a nice little link to get up to the G. But yeah, as Yvonne says, in that context it's really, really hard to get from D to this big chunky bar chord, and then up to G, because you're kind of twisting your hand. And this is a thing that I think about a lot, is finding chord shapes which are played in the same hand position. So you've got, in my mind anyway, you've got some chords which are that shape, let's call it like open hand position, and you've got some chords where you're in that shape, like a closed hand position. So D, for example, is an open hand position because my hand's twisted that way, and G and A, all the kind of normal chords that you learn to begin with are these kind of open hand ones. But then when you get to bar chords, they become closed hand because you've twisted round like that. So if you can find a selection of chords that are all closed hand or open hand, they'll be easier to change between. So like shifting between several bar chords at speed is easy. Shifting between several open chords is easy. Mixing and matching both, very hard. So, number one thing for avoiding F sharp minor, well, if you're in the key of D, just get your D chord and loop your thumb around the back and put it on the bottom string 2nd fret. And that is called D over F sharp, because it's still a D chord, but it's got a different note from the D chord other than D at the bottom of it. In this case, it's got the 3rd note of a D scale, D, E, F sharp, and that's gone at the bottom of the chord. So it's D over F sharp in the bass. And that works exactly the same. You can do your thing linking D up to G with that, so you'd go D, then D over F sharp, making sure to accentuate the bass note, and then you'd go on up to G, and that would sound really nice. I know a lot of people struggle to get their thumbs around the back, particularly ladies with smaller hands. So another way you can do a similar thing is to go like that. So this is the same chord shape pretty much, except that now it's got the open E string in it. And the way I've done that is I take my index finger, I start with a D chord, and then take the index finger off and put it on the 2nd fret down the bottom, and then I take the middle finger off and put that where the index finger was before. So that gives you this. You can leave the top E string in it, that's perfectly fine, sounds nice. And that is more or less D over F sharp. I suppose its proper name would be D add 9 over F sharp or something like that. But it's basically a substitute for F sharp minor. That kind of thing. That chord, by the way, D over F sharp, either version of it, will work as chord 7 if you're in the key of G as well. So a replacement for F sharp diminished. So that's really handy, that shape. Another way you can replace F sharp minor is with this. And the times I would use this one are if I was playing in the key of A major. So in A major, if I grab the mode wheel again, you can get a mode wheel, by the way. Once folkfriend.co.uk is live, you can find them on folkfriend.co.uk. Just go on the shop page there. For now, you can also find them at finaleguitar.co.uk/shop. So check out the mode wheel if you want to find all the chords really quickly. I'll put a link in the description as well. I know everyone who's watching right now has already got one of these, actually, but well, pretty much. Possibly with the odd exception. But yeah, you can get one there if you want one there. Really handy. So yeah, if we're in the key of A major, A Ionian, A major is our chord 1, and its related minor would be F sharp minor, because that's 2 below it in the scale. So in that context, you can use this really nifty shape. You put your index finger on the bottom fret, on the bottom string on the 2nd fret, and you let that gently mute the A string. And then you put your next 2 fingers 2nd fret of the D and G strings, and then you can strum all the strings. And with that shape, if you play an A chord, but you play it with the wrong fingers, so that your index finger is spare, so that's your A like that, then it's really easy to switch down to F sharp minor, because you just put your index finger on, take your little finger off. You can even leave the little finger on, and that gives you another kind of jazzy F sharp minor substitute. Something like that. Another really nice thing that you can do if you are playing in the key of A, if you start off with this shape, so A but played with the index finger left free, then you can go down to F sharp minor like that, just add the index finger on the bottom string. You can also get to a really nice B minor chord, which is a B minor 9, by going from your A shape again and just moving the middle finger down 1 string. And that gives you B minor 9, which is a really interesting, unusual substitute for a B minor chord as well. So yeah, that's a good option. And also you can use this in place of B minor in most contexts if you want to as well. It'll just come out sounding jazzier than usual. But yeah, also a good option for B minor. So yeah, if you were playing in A, you could do something like... that kind of thing, just using those couple of shapes there. Yeah. Diddly dee. Are there any other common bar chords? Let me think. No, I don't think so. So let's move on to the ones that are kind of optional bar chords. One thing I like to do is if I'm playing in a key, an E minor type key, so E Dorian or E Aeolian, I'll very often play a bar chord way up here. So that is a bar on the 7th fret and then the A minor shape on that. And sometimes I'll use an E minor 7 because that sounds nicer, jazzier, a bit softer, a bit more dramatic. So it's also easier to play, of course, because you can just take that finger off, so you've got one less finger to worry about. But if you don't like those kinds of bar chords, a really nice option is what I call the triangle shapes. So in the key of E minor, if you put your middle finger on the 7th fret of the A string, your ring finger on the 5th fret of the D string, and your index finger on the 5th fret of the D string, and your ring finger on the 7th fret of the G string, then you can play all the strings and get this really nice A minor 7 chord, making use of the open strings, which also gives it a really nice kind of dadgaddy, folky kind of sound. And you can use that in conjunction with the B minor 11 chord that I showed you before. So from this triangle shape, leave the ring finger where it is, put the middle finger on the 7th fret of the D string, and put your index finger on the 7th fret of the bottom string, and that gives you your chord 5 in E minor, which is B minor. And you've maintained those top two strings in common, which kind of glues it all together nicely, gives it this really nice kind of ethereal, floaty quality. And then, if you slide your B minor down 2 frets, you've got A minor. So you can get all these really nice chords just by moving between those three, basically. So that would work if you were in E Aeolian, because E Aeolian has an A minor as its chord 4. If I put that on there, you can see the notes. There we go. There's E Aeolian with my E minor as my chord 1. My chord 4 is A minor. And my chord 5 is B minor. More common in Celtic music than the Aeolian mode is the Dorian mode, and that's the more optimistic of the two minor keys that are commonly used in kind of Western European folk music. So if I was in E Dorian, I'll just turn this round again so you can see it. In E Dorian, my chord 1 is still E minor, my chord 5 is still B minor, but my chord 4 is A major instead of A minor. And that kind of optimistic 4 chord is a big part of what makes the Dorian mode sound more optimistic than the dark, miserable Aeolian mode. So if I wanted to do these same shapes for a Dorian tune, my chord 1 is still going to be E minor with my triangle, like that. My chord 5 is still going to be B minor. It's a B minor 11 chord, that one. And then if I go down 2 frets with that, then I have to move this ring finger up 1 fret, and that gives me A9, that is, that chord. Basically, I've taken the minor third, which was under that finger, and I've converted it into a major chord to make that a major-y sounding chord rather than a minor-y sounding one. So that is an A9 chord. So that gives me those kinds of things. Are there any other common instances where you can use bar chords with open strings? Yeah, just here's one for the drop D people out there, just to if I'm ever playing in drop D, I tend to drop the D string if it's like a tune in D, obviously, or a tune in D minor. It's self-explanatory when I say it, isn't it? So if I was playing in D minor, I would almost, if I'm playing in D major, I tend to just use normal chords, those kinds of things. But if I'm playing in D minor, I will almost always do it using bar chords. Those kinds of things. The reason I like to use the bar chord there is because I really like the kind of contrast between a big beefy bass note down the bottom and then these higher notes up here that sort of offset it a bit. So I find it more atmospheric than that. The other thing I like about bar chords is that when you hit them, you can mute them with the left hand, so you can be going all out with the strumming and not having to worry about being gentle and trying to mute things. You can just mute them with the left hand. So if I want to make a kind of staccato jig pattern instead of a ringing one, I can go from that kind of thing, because I'm just lifting up the bar as I hit the strings with the other hand, and that is going to kind of mute my strings. So there's a lot of advantages to using chord shapes where you're holding down as many strings as possible so that you can mute with your left hand. But there are ways you can do that without bar chords. One of them is using the triangles again. Now you can hear my minor triangle doesn't really sound very good for D minor because I've got a B and an E at the top of it and they clash a little bit like that. Sort of interesting, but not really very pleasant necessarily in a folky context. But if you take the triangle that we used before for E minor, so you've got your, we've shifted the whole triangle down 2 frets so that it's D now. You've got your middle finger on the 5th fret of the A string, and you've got your index finger on the 3rd fret of the D string, and your ring finger on the 5th fret of the G string. If you just add the little finger there, so that the little finger is on the B string 6th fret, that is a bit of a stretch, but that makes a really nice D minor 7 chord. And it has the advantage that because you're fretting all the strings, you can mute with your left hand still. That kind of thing. So that's a handy shape. It's not necessarily that easy though, is it? Let's see if there's any other interesting D voicings that have that quality. Yes, power chords. Power chords are a good substitute for bar chords in most contexts. If we look at this example, if we're still in drop D, if we play a chord like this, which is a power chord, which is kind of like an L shape, so it's always the same shape for a power chord, you can just slide them about anywhere. In this instance, I want a D1, so I've got my index finger on the 5th fret of the A string, that's my D root note. And then on the next 2 strings on the 7th fret, I'm going to put my ring finger and then my little finger. So at the bottom, this is giving me D, my bass note, D again, the root note again, D's 5th, which is A, and then D again. So it's just roots and fifths, is very definitely D, not much character to it, but nice and strident. And I'm going to just let my little finger kind of rest on the other strings so that they're muted. The good thing about power chords is they're not minor or major, so you can use them for either, because they haven't got a third in, so you can't tell whether they're minor or major, and that means they can replace D major or D minor. So that's really handy. If I just go back to, I'll go back to standard. You can use a power chord in place of any bar chord. You just put your power chord on the root note of whatever bar chord you want. So with our F example, you could play it down there. You just only get 3 notes, so it'll be a big bassy thing, and in some contexts, if that's what you want, it's quite useful. It's just not got any high end to it, which is a bit of a shame. However, depending what you're trying to replace with the power chord, it may be that the open strings can stay. So for example, if you're trying to replace an E bar chord way up here, like an E minor bar chord like I played before, you can make an E power chord, which is much easier to play. And because you've got an E string, another E string and a B string, well, B is the fifth of E, E, F sharp, G, A, B. So leaving that B in is going to sound great. So you can do that kind of thing. And if you're in the key of E minor, E Aeolian, or E Dorian, actually you can get away with it as well, you can just slide that shape down 2 frets to get the D chord, slide it down 2 more to get the C chord, and slide it down 1 more to get the B minor chord. So and you could put it down there for the A, or you could put it down there and just let your index finger kind of fall off the top of the neck, and that would give you A. And because we're in an E key, leaving the top 2 strings in all of those sounds good, so that's really handy as well. And it means you can avoid the B minor chord in E by just playing a power chord like that. Huh, actually that's another B minor for you all, isn't it? You can play a B power chord and leave the top 2 strings in, and that sounds great for a B minor substitute. So yeah. So that's about it really. I think that's all the main bar chords and sort of substitutes thereof. Does anyone have any other things they particularly struggle with, or anything else that I can say anything useful about? I think we're all good. Cool. In that case then, I will sign off. Just if you want diagrams for lots of alternatives to bar chords, there is oh, has my internet gone off? Oh no, maybe not. Yeah, if you want what was I saying? If you want diagrams for lots of alternatives to bar chords, there are loads of them in my book, Backing Guitar Techniques for Traditional Celtic Music. And again, you can find that at finaleguitar.co.uk/shop. It's also going to be on the brand new Folk Friend website, which will be out next week. So check folkfriend.co.uk. It just says coming soon at the moment, but it won't be like that for much longer, so keep an eye on it. I'll put a link to that as well, just in case you're watching on the replay and you haven't already got the book. Oh, nice one. Thank you, Chrissy. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. Ah, you're off gallivanting again, are you, Yvonne? I see how it is. Yeah, get back fast before Brexit, I suppose, isn't it? I suppose you're there for Christmas, are you? I'm very jealous. Cool. Right then, yeah, next weekend I will be here. I'll be here next Friday at 5:30, same as usual. Following Friday is Christmas. I doubt very much that I'll be doing one that day, because I don't think anyone would watch it. I'm sure I'll be at my mum's as well, but I'm sure she'd be up for doing one on Christmas, but I doubt anyone else will actually be up for watching it. So yeah. But yeah, next week I'll be here, following week won't be here, week after that should be back to normal, I think. The week after that's New Year's Day actually, so I might have a day off. But anyway, we'll confirm next week. So, only remains to say thank you very much for tuning in. Oh, Brian, really love the triangle chords and the power chords. Yeah, no worries, I'm glad you like them. I think the triangles are fantastic, really. The triangles are my favourite little folk chord find. Really useful. But yeah, thank you all very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all next week. Keep an eye on folkfriend.co.uk and check out tomorrow's Tetrads video if you want loads of cool jazzy chord ideas and a bit of a guide to how you can build your own from scratch. So yeah, nice one. See you all soon. Cheers.